Hey everybody, how's it going out there? We're gonna be going over the absolute mess that has been Act 2 of the Goonergate, or at least Act 2 for me, since I only saw it for the first time in December. First, the full context so that nobody pops up in here saying that I'm misrepresenting stuff. So back in December, I made this video right here on the rising Goonergate situation where some people on the internet lost their composure after seeing a character from First Descendant doing a little dance in what I can only describe as a battle thong. In that video, I tackled two different people's arguments that went kinda viral on Twitter, Melonie Mac and Dread Roberts. You guys can go and check out the video if you want a full refresher. The thing is, I got quite a few comments telling me about how much worse the situation actually was, how nuts Melonie Mac actually was, she was crazy, etc. But I ignored them because at the time I didn't really know her or her content and I hadn't been exposed to any of her unhinged nonsensical rants yet. All I was going off of was based on her words and the context in question from her string of tweets at the time, which was basically this. Number 1, First Descendant is an irredeemable Gooner game that only losers play. Number 2, it's degenerate corn content that goes against the Bible, blah 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 blah. However, number 3, she liked and approved of Stellar Blade because it was not made with the intent to be lustful or pornographic. If she happens to see this or any of her followers and say that I'm misrepresenting her, I'm not. I'm just keeping the intro short. I got nothing to hide, you can check out the first video on the matter, it's all right there. I gave her all the leniency in the world. Actually, I technically didn't even give her any leniency because there was none to give. I genuinely believed that she was a reasonable person coming at this issue from a reasonable position where content like Stellar Blade was genuinely okay, which it absolutely is, but that First Descendant was not, because she did not know First Descendant as a game. She claimed, after all, that anytime that she saw anything from that game it was because of butt cheeks and cleavage. And so because of these bits of information, I assumed that the big issue here was that Melonie simply didn't know First Descendant as a game. She thought that it was some kind of 18+ game. Because if she did know the game, then by that logic she could not be a fan of Stellar Blade either, and find it appropriate, since they're both very much the same. They are action games with optional outfits that you can unlock of various revealing degrees, some less, some more, and then a camera that the player can move wherever they want. And in place of First Descendant's musical characters dancing, in Stellar Blade we have I mean, you name it. You got Eve's own movement, you got cutscenes where she poses in very striking ways and with camera angles that will be definitely revealing depending on what type of outfit that you're wearing, among other things that with the free movement of a camera anyone can exploit if they want to for those purposes, but that in no way, shape or form places any stupid evangelical blame on the game itself for being corn. The only thing that can make it perverted is if a person perverts it, and people can pervert anything. Therefore, there is no logical argument advocating for censorship or deeming either of these games as pornographic. They are extremely comparable games in this aspect, yet, according to Melonie's own words, they are complete contrasts of one another. One is degenerate, gooner, loser, lustful content, and the other is totally fine content, approved, stylish femininity and attractiveness with no pornographic intent. So her having the wrong idea of First Descendant was what I assumed in good faith. Turns out that I was devastatingly wrong, because since then she has only gone on to double down and get even more extreme and unhinged with her views. It has resulted in a shit show over the last couple of days, which has also gone on to involve Razorfist, John Arroz, and a bunch of other people, bringing the Goonergate situation back in full swing and maximum drama. I absolutely love the name Goonergate too, by the way. Anyway, in this video we're gonna tackle their arguments, or lack thereof, directly, talking about some realistic concepts in regards to this topic. I mean, someone has to, since they have been incapable of doing so on their own, but we'll get to that in a second. But also going over inconsistent statements from them and the problems they pose. Then we'll address the overall delusion going on with this side of the gaming culture war. So let's get in there, have some actual discussion of ideas, and maybe laugh a little bit here and there. And laugh we will, because this is hilarious, and the main reason why this whole Goonergate debacle is so funny is because of how silly it all looks. Like out of nowhere, these Eastern games start popping up with appealing and even attractive character designs, which are especially noticed on the female side, and people get really happy because of all of this far left ideological bullshit over the past few years, trying to censor and redefine the concepts of beauty and attractiveness by making female character design look drab, boring, and at times even ugly, along with terrible writing ideas that can be bogged down to obnoxious, dislikable girl boss behavior, in the name of a couple of things. Number one, in the name of the male gaze, because men are disgusting pigs and we live in a patriarchal society and blah 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 blah.
You get about 100,000 of these fucking men. You know the ones I mean, these macho motherfuckers. And you throw them in a big dirt arena, and you just let them beat the shit out of each other for 24 hours non-stop. No food, no water, just whiskey and PCP.
And so, them, because women were not meant to be sexualized for them, while at the same time promoting gooning for women and gay people through articles like this one. I got a whole video on this matter if you're interested, by the way. And number two, in the name of harmful body and beauty standards, because women are suffering great harm under these insane, unachievable standards that fictional characters have, especially those women who aren't actually women. And so beautiful bodies and faces must be eradicated or toned down to better represent the world around us, to better make people feel validated and represented, which apparently, according to far leftists, means androgynous, ugly women who cannot take care of themselves. No other designs are encouraged, even in settings where it would make sense, such as the hyper-fictionalized and action-packed genre of hero shooters like Concord. Now, obviously, not every game was doing this, of course, but it was obvious that the trend was ramping up, as it was even being presented in announcements for upcoming games, and anytime we complained about it, we were shut down on the spot, called porn-addicted gooners and incels who have never seen real women, which is pretty goddamn similar to the language being used by these Puritans right now. So then this year people saw characters like these, such as Eve from Stellar Blade, the ladies from Black Myth Wukong perfectly scanned after their actresses without any uglification process going on, the female space marine— wait a minute, what the fuck? Hold on, that ain't right. Who f***ed with my script? And then the ladies from the First Descendants and the ladies from Marvel Rivals. After seeing these designs, people start celebrating these characters. They post screenshots all over social media, and not just as an appreciation for someone finally not being afraid of presenting attractive women in these prominent roles such as action heroes and superheroes, but also as a bit of a fuck you to all of these raging woked out people and activist developers who were getting triggered at seeing them, especially the game journalists after trying to unsuccessfully shame players being excited for these games. But then suddenly, it's not just the wokies, the activists and the game journalists that are getting triggered by these character designs, it's also this whole new sub-faction of— I mean, how do we even label this? I don't even know. They're conservative, but they don't represent all conservatives, as many have voiced how unhinged they are acting. They're religious, but they also don't represent all religious people, as many have also voiced how out of line and wrong their actions and perceptions are as well. And they're retarded, but they don't represent all retarded people because I'm one of them, and this is too far even for me.
Ooh, self-burn. Those are rare.
No, but seriously, they're like a very extreme mix of both. Some have taken to calling them Puritans, so let's go with that for this video, but yeah, I've yet to figure out what fits better. One way or another though, these people are advocating for mostly the same thing that all of those far-left ideologues advocated for, except they're doing it under a different narrative. They even use the same stupid little excuses to shut down discussion by calling people corn-addicted gooners and incels, and instead of using the word bigot, they use the word degenerate. But the tactics are exactly the same, and the rules are similar. There's only one thing that differs between them. Puritans are pro-beauty, so basically they're not advocating for ugly women, but they are against quote-unquote degeneracy. However, the best way that they've been able to describe what falls under degeneracy is corn, which is extremely vague and useless because we do not have corn in the games industry. What is in Stellar Blade and First Descendants is not corn. So, like, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? Because without clarifications, they're just wrong, and there's no two ways around it. But anyway, their main reasoning is very simple too. It's because it's bad because of the Bible. No matter the context, no matter anything. It's just bad because it's their personal belief that it is bad, that it is sinful, that it is lustful, even though it wholly depends on the individual. When you're talking about straight up corn, you could make the argument that it is sinful, because there's no other utility to it. Corn was only made for one thing: making popcorn. However, if we're talking about games, movies, or TV shows that happen to have some scenes with nudity or some spicy scenes here and there to move the story along, or even if it's just there for a little bit of fan service in some instance or another, it doesn't immediately compromise the entire product and turn its meaning pornographic. And now here's the main issue with all of this. What I said in the last minute or two has been more than what Melonie Mac, Razorfist, John Arroz, or John F. Trent have said in regards to the technicalities of this topic. When you're talking about stuff like this, especially when you have this intent for censorship, for shaping content to be whatever it is that you approve of, you have to get specific. What Melonie has gone on to describe as corn is what she calls lustful content. So basically content that is attractive, content that exudes sex appeal, or content that is suggestive. And that's me being extremely good faith here, because these people haven't honestly engaged with any of this at all. It is their inability to actually engage in a productive conversation and lay out actual tangible arguments and examples that has led this to the level of drama and hilarity that it is at now, because people are calling them out on their inconsistencies, such as the situation between First Descendant and Stellar Blade, or pointing out the fact that what could fit into the attractive or sex appeal label is incredibly wide and complicated and subjective and filled with the same hypocritical complications that can also be found in arguments brought forward by the woke mob. Does a bare-chested man count? It's lustful, it's attractive. Is a woman's butt cheeks where the limit is at? Can she wear a skirt? Thighs can be very suggestive, as can breasts, even while wearing clothes. Is it down to the behavior of the characters? Are two mature characters presented in a mature romance scene like the ones in Mass Effect or Dragon Age or Witcher, etc., crossing that line as well? They're incredibly suggestive, they're pretty much engaging in the act, it's just that the camera eventually fades out before anything actually pornographic begins happening, but it's still suggestive. It can still be more than enough for some people to find lustful. Does that mean that it must be corrected? That it must be removed? Just because of some people making issues out of something that is subjective and that is not directly pornographic, which is the main point here? If First Descendant is supposed to be considered corn for losers and degenerates by the interpretations of Melonie Mac, Razorfist, John F. Trent, and Arroz over a little dancing from one optional character in one optional outfit in the midst of a shooter packed with loads of different characters with a heavy majority of content that is composed of regular run-of-the-mill action, then anything at all in any RPG that dares to have a romance scene with a character is the same, because it is evocative of sex and often includes at least partial nudity that is even more revealing than the character that they're losing their minds over. These are important questions that people are rightfully asking, and they're also drawing perfectly fair comparisons to the wokies, and their responses to all of this, instead of clarifying their positions with anything that makes sense, are to either pull the religious card and start going off about how the Lord is with them and the truth is with them and all of us are degenerates, or to start playing victims. John even went full cringe with this post right here. Christians will not be bullied out of gaming. Do you think a few words on the internet are going to stop a people whose leader was tortured and put on a cross for standing up for the truth? You picked a fight with the wrong people. We have convictions we'll die for. You don't. Like, what in the Lord of the Rings trilogy of fuck was this? This was better written dialogue than anything in Dragon Age Veilguard. They should have hired this guy to write the speech for the final battle. But yeah, as it is, as it stands under the context that it's in, it's just cringe, dude. And beyond inappropriate to actual Christianity. You're equating your stupid little spat about video game booty to what Jesus endured in life? The dude needs to calm way down. He sounds like he's at war or something when this is actually really simple. They are unable to define what is and isn't appropriate while having the gall to call for censorship, while being insanely vague and inconsistent about the measures, merely using words like lustful and degenerate and shutting down discourse by calling anyone disagreeing or asking for more clarification as corn addicts, even though there is no corn anywhere. No examples have been given thus far. Zero. None. And so people are clowning on them a little. It is what it is. It's the internet. And posts like these are only going to increase the clowning, because this is the equivalent of a green-haired they-them in a bathroom screaming into TikTok because someone just misgendered them during their shift, and how they no longer feel safe behind the counter at Starbucks. It's either vague terms or strawmanning or self-victimization or insults, and then they're surprised at the backlash. So let's take a look at Melonie Mac, for example. Let's see what she says about Stellar Blade to see if we can at least get some kind of idea as to what she means when she says lustful content, and as to why Stellar Blade is okay but First Descendant is not, alongside with whatever other games they're talking about without giving any examples of. This is yet another thing we'll have to address later in this video in the following topic. It's the fact that they're acting as if there's this massive danger sweeping over the goddamn industry with all these Gooner games, but we'll go into that in a second. So she says, "You're against Gooner games but you bought Stellar Blade. I didn't realize you couldn't play the game like a normal person and that taking pervy screenshots in the most provocative outfits possible was how the game was supposed to be played, and here I was actually interested in the gameplay as a cute character. Oh, silly me, I have been playing games wrong this entire time." See, this is why people are coming at her. It's her lies and her manipulation of the situation, her completely inconsistent arguments, and then her insane ramblings with claims that nobody has ever made whenever she has nowhere else to turn to. She can't clarify nor defend her position, so she makes shit up. If the argument is that Stellar Blade is okay because it can be played normally with just a cute character in a modest outfit, then there is absolutely no fucking difference whatsoever from First Descendant, because you can do the exact same thing right there. You can even play as a man if you want. No one said taking pervy screenshots is the way to play the game. You, however, said that anyone who touches First Descendant is a loser because it is a perverted and degenerate game. By deeming Stellar Blade good, which is by the way what you didn't just buy the game, you approved of the game. You watched and reacted to a video of someone, I think it was Grums actually, prancing around in a bunny outfit, and you said that there were no problems with that at all, that it was not pornographic.
And I have the same stance on queers as I do these gooners.
Is this anything pornographic? I would say no.
Yes, what you're doing is shameful. Yes, I think this stuff is shameful and I don't want it in my entertainment because it's shameful and it's hurting society.
I mean, dude,
have these people played Final Fantasy, the people complaining? Have they played Final Fantasy at all? It's disgusting and it's perverted. No, I don't want it.
because this, especially like some of the, I mean, Final Fantasy, we've seen outfits like this get even more revealing.
It's art. Do I think that people participating in these activities are losers? Yes. It's not even pornographic at all. I don't see the problem. But you know what? It doesn't mean you have to always be a loser.
By doing that, you were setting an actual acceptable standard, where you were recognizing that the game's intent is not sexual, and therefore it is allowed to exist as it is, even if some players may take it and engage with it in a way that you disapprove of. But what you are claiming now is that any optional content in a game like First Descendant that may be suggestive, such as a revealing outfit or a little dance, is enough to deem a game a perverted, degenerate pile of hypersexualized slop, and that absolutely has to include Stellar Blade. Then look at her lying again. It just looked like a normal game with a cute protagonist. Then the Gooners posted all their degenerate screenshots and ruined its reputation. The game's recognition was already prominently about the character's attractiveness, so much so that game journalists tried to bash it and its developers as people who have never seen a real woman in their lives, and comment sections were already deeming people as Gooners and incels for being into it, which was precisely what Melonie Mac defended in that clip. So now if they're prancing around in thirsty outfits, they're Gooners, but back then they weren't and everything was fine. Make up your f***ing mind. I agree that the speech surrounding Stellar Blade has sadly not been about its gameplay as much as I wish that it was. I already mentioned this in my video suggesting a few purchases for Christmas last December. Most of the time, it's just about Eve's appearance, and so to the general public, this game may come across as some surface-level sexy bait game. But it's one thing to criticize this aspect of the community, and another one entirely to declare them degenerates. You're an insanely unhinged, narcissistic, judgmental person for for doing this. And then you play the victim with posts like these, surprised as to why people respond to you in a hostile way after you being the one who engaged with hostility in the first place. And no, you can't just label your hostility as love or as justified by pulling the Jesus card, just like the wokies can't label or justify theirs by pulling the marginalized card. People are judged by their actions and the contents of their character, not what they claim to be driven by. And the worst part about all of this is that it doesn't even stop there. The main reason why people are seemingly up in arms against you is because you are advocating for censorship, with nothing but incredibly vague, inconsistent, and even hypocritical arguments. This isn't even about you trying to impart good Christian values on people. This isn't about you wanting to inspire people to be better or to let go of what you deem self-destructive ways and to turn away from bad lives and get them on the path to better ones. You're not some virtuous saint respecting people and showing them a better way. You're just being an insecure, authoritative bully commanding what people can and can't engage with, and worse, advocating for censorship of media that you don't approve of. This is not the way to get these things done. You're not going to change anyone's minds like this. This isn't the Christian thing to do. And that's when we're talking about lives, because when we're talking about actual censorship or alteration or moderation of media, then you better bring your A game with consistent arguments, values, comparisons, examples, etc., and patience, instead of just going for insults and virtue signaling like the second coming of Anita Sarkeesian or some shit. Razorfist then also jumped on the same boat, backing Melonie's absolute lack of arguments, and instead of doing the Christian thing and helping her out by fleshing out their arguments and giving examples of what it is that they're talking about as they carry on with their personal crusades of deeming certain content acceptable and unacceptable within the entertainment industry, he just doubled down on the lunacy. And I just don't understand why. I don't know this guy's content or anything like that. I had just heard good things of him, so I had good expectations of him. Instead, it was just more of the same. Smash JT posted the video of Melonie Mac talking about how Stellar Blade is totally cool and approved and not pornographic at all, spliced together with her most recent video addressing the Goonergate, in which she talked and talked and talked, but once again gave no real arguments or examples that people can actually latch onto and have a discussion. In fact, it only made her stance more inconsistent and hypocritical, as you can see in the video. That's actually something that I forgot to mention. That video edit was actually from Smash JT. So Razorfist sees this, doesn't even bother to check the context, doesn't bother to get the information out of it, nothing. He just goes in on the defense. You're more full of shit than the only porta potty at Coachella. No shit, she doesn't care if women are hot. Her favorite game is Tomb Raider. Unless there's a hidden Lara Croft twerking scene I'm unaware of, that's not a gotcha. It's evidence that you've exaggerated her complaint. No, it's not. It's evidence of her hypocrisy and inability to lay down a consistent argument, and in this statement, Razorfist does the exact same thing because he mentions twerking, no doubt in reference to that clip from First Descendant. That's twerking?
What are you, Down syndrome?
And this twerking narrative went to space. Of course, Melonie Mac also said the same kind of shit. She already called it stripping back in December, which elicited me to say this. And to call this stripping is also a stretch. If this was stripping, the entire stripping industry would have collapsed already. Everybody'd just be going to church instead.
I shouldn't have said that. Listen, I think we'll be all right.
Which, going back to that video and thinking about it now, I was way too easy on both her and Dread Raw. I mean, actually, I don't know, because I don't know if Dread Roberts is sharing in on all of this narrative. I haven't really seen him tweet anything in the past couple of days, but then again, I didn't really check either. But it really goes to show just how wrong of an idea I had of Melonie Mac. Initially, it was just, she doesn't want corn in video games. That's a perfectly valid assessment. I have the same assessment. I don't want corn in video games either. Corn is corn. Video games are video games. They're separate things. The problem is that apparently for this girl, corn is just about anything that supposedly elicits lust. And for me, corn is corn. You see, I have this really fucking retarded thing about me, which is I like words to mean what they supposedly mean. So to me, if someone says stripping, then it's supposed to be stripping. If someone says twerking, then it's supposed to be twerking. And if what I'm looking at is just dancing, then it's supposed to be dancing. So when someone says corn, to me, it's corn, not some girl in a fucking battle thong doing a little wiggle. You know, the English language is this wonderful thing. It allows us to use so many different words to describe whatever it is that we need to describe and to express ourselves clearly. And yeah, I'm no authority on this, you know, English is not my first language, but I so wish that people used it more genuinely in these situations. Because now this is the new narrative. That video right there is now considered twerking. Razorfist also says it right here, again in response to the Act Man, implying that this is all that this game is. An M-rated game that features a twerking female ass, even though there is no twerking, and again, the entire thing is optional. Also, it's M-rated, which means that it's rated accordingly, so what's the problem? This isn't being shared out to kids. If you don't want your kids playing an M-rated game, then don't buy them M-rated games. But Des, what if they buy them themselves? Use parental controls. People's inabilities to regulate the content that they consume or that their children consume doesn't make it so that now we have to ban all content that may be inappropriate. How the fuck do I even have to write this down, dude? This kind of narrative is not going to stop at First Descendant. It would spread to Stellar Blade, because it's the exact same thing. Optional revealing stuff being too much for certain people, therefore we must ban it. Marvel Rivals would also be up next, because of course. Fire Emblem, another video game that Melonie Mac approves of, should also get banned because there's a bikini DLC. You know, it's optional, but then again, so is the First Descendant situation. All of it completely optional. They're already acting like woke people by making shit up and exaggerating their claims, like calling dancing, twerking and stripping, in order to justify that that game is corn. So how long until they find ways to twist normal in-game content into some other bullshit to paint it as yet another degenerate thing that needs to be pulled from gaming because it potentially elicits lust? And then after lust, who knows what else will come, because Razorfist also says this right here: the gaming culture war has more options than woketivist proselytism versus Korean Goonergate. Which is true, there's a lot more of it out there, and in fact it's the majority of the content, but sadly these people don't see it. Instead they're painting a narrative that the Gooner content is taking over. At the end of the day, people just want good games that are unhindered by an ideology that tries to desexualize or defeminize female characters or influence any other type of content in any other type of way. That's not asking for degenerate corn and Gooner games, something that would never happen anyway because this industry is simply not shaped that way. They're just getting triggered by these characters and making up this entire issue around it to justify their lust for control. He continues saying that we can in fact insist on good games that are not spiritually caustic or degenerate, a statement that I would just ignore and move on with my day if not brought along with all of this baggage. Because again, on its own the statement is fine, because these words are so extreme, they mean things that are very specific, very strong, and they don't at all reflect the content that we actually have in the video games. But with all of this baggage, all of this context together, then it's just yet another set of questions that this brings. Like, what the fuck is a spiritually caustic game? What exactly entails degeneracy? Anything that breaks the commandments? Well shit, in the vast majority of the games, there's theft and violence, even murder. And that's not to mention video games such as RPGs and GTA, where you can legitimately play as a bad person, doing evil choices and winning on top of that, getting through the story and beating the game through bad moral decisions and sinful acts. So what are we to do with all of this? And what about games like the Witcher series, where one of the themes present in some instances have to do with God abandoning people and people turning to pagan shit, such as worshipping monsters as gods? We already saw people whose complaints in regards to the Witcher 4's trailer wasn't that Ciri was made a Witcher, breaking the lore or anything like that, but simply because of a piece of dialogue that says there are no gods here, only monsters, calling it anti-Christian and anti-religion when it's directly tied to the story of the trailer, where people are needlessly worshipping a false god in the woods that is actually a Kikimor, which is a direct relation to a quest in Witcher 3 where people are worshipping a Leshen in the woods. Is this the retardation we're going to have to deal with in the future? A game comes out and has a random line of dialogue or something else that triggers these people into a riot, and if you don't agree with them, then you're not a real gamer or a real conservative or a real Christian? Are games like these okay, or are we going to go down the wokey road where they get a finger and eventually they take a mile, and then we're back in the satanic panic bullshit of the 90s and early 2000s where some very religious and very controlling people wanted to ban anything at all that they deemed as blasphemy or as dangerous or anti-Christianity, etc. Something that Razorfist says it's a lie, it's all made up. Didn't actually happen. It was the media lying to us, even though we remember this shit not at all because of the media, but because we saw it and lived through it ourselves. Not even fucking Pokemon was safe. John Arroz also went with the narrative that there was no such thing, then he got community noted and his argument changed to, well, maybe people should stop being satanic in entertainment. So then it did exist, but apparently it was actually a good thing. You can't take this shit seriously at all, man. Then we had John F. Trent, a reporter from That Park Place and Fandom Pulse, someone who does legitimately good work reporting on things that the other gaming news media companies like IGN, Kotaku, etc. do not cover. He went full mask off in a reply to Madam Savvy. We will ban your corn hobby. What the fuck is he? What are you talking about? Do you see what I mean with these people? They're just insanely ideologically captured, just like the woke dipshits on the left, just with different reasons that they believe make them righteous, but they really don't. It's still authoritative bullshit wanting to control entertainment by imposing creative restrictions. Sound familiar? It's just like this DEI-ridden list that some publishers use, like Xbox Game Studios. Just different measures and a couple of different reasons, that's it. Calling something corn that is not corn, with this righteousness mentality that it needs to be abolished for the good of humanity, is the same thing as calling racism to something that is not racist, and then blackwashing a few characters for the good of humanity. So let's start closing this video off little by little. In some of these arguments, the narrative presented is that we are undergoing some sort of Gooner ideology that is influencing and corrupting media. You got headlines like this, quoting tweets from two of our protagonists here. We can in fact insist on good games that are not spiritually caustic or degenerate, which nobody made a move against. This implies that people are insisting on spiritually caustic or degenerate games, or that the industry is naturally moving towards it, even though we haven't even gotten out of the fucking DEI problem infesting it in the first place. Just give it a few more weeks and we'll be back to getting our hands on more pronoun-ridden garbage. And then in Melonie's case, get the perverts out of gaming. Games based on lustful intent lack substance, as if we have a fucking string of video games based on lustful intent. Something she, again, I know I've said this like 6 or 7 or even 10 times throughout the video, but it bears repeating until the end of time, she has been unable to define herself. Then you got this guy right here as an example of what their fan bases are looking like right now, going with the same narrative of this non-existent obsession with hypersexualization in video games, which is yet another parallel with the wokey stuff, like when people with virtue signal about racism and misogyny in the gaming industry in order to get what they want and push their agenda, without ever being able to show any substantial evidence to back up what they're talking about. We just don't have any examples that this industry is going down this corn road, where it would actually elicit some action because of it affecting the quality of the video games. I really don't care if Melonie Mac and John Arroz and Razorfist and John F. Trent genuinely believe that their reason for advocating for censorship is a righteous one that is correct. Let's just face it, that really doesn't matter. When the wokies advocate for the same thing of censorship, they're doing it because they fully believe that their cause is also rooted in righteous moral values. They genuinely believe the bullshit that they want to enforce, and the main problem was never that they have those bullshit beliefs to begin with. It's that they want to enforce them on other people around them through corporate, education, government, entertainment, etc. That has always been the main issue. The main goal has always been to keep video games free of ideological societal influences that want to force values onto them or apply creative restrictions and requirements to push an agenda or an ideology. The goal was to free it from all of that, not to replace it with new requirements and new creative restrictions from a different source. The only way this little quote-unquote anti-Gooner movement has any leg to stand on is if there was a sexy ideology creeping into the industry and influencing the main content that gets made here in the main industry. I'm not talking about the 18+ section on Steam, I'm talking about the main industry, which is what these people are talking about as well. An ideology where, for example, you would start an RPG and instead of male or female or, you know, body type A or body type B, it would be a picture of a penis or a pair of boobs.
Michael.
Yo soy can.
And then, for example, you would start the game, and let's pretend like it's Skyrim, right? So you start and you are in the back of a wagon being carted over to an execution in Goon Town. To your right is the Gooner King. He has the biggest in the realm and is getting executed for banging the king's girlfriend. You arrive in Goon Town and create your character. If you spec into charisma, then you have the option to skip the execution entirely, because that Imperial Captain lady is seduced by your Alpha Riz, so she takes you into a barn and fucks the shit out of you during the dragon attack in a fully animated scene. When you walk out of that barn, you don't even know what just happened, because the sex was so brutally amazing that you couldn't even tell if the earthquakes and the heat were from both of you or something else. And so then you pick up your sword and you head off in your quest to slay the dragon, but in order to do so you must unlock the special Goonerbane sword, which is locked in a sacred chest which requires like, I don't know, 19 special keys that sexy ladies own. So despite having a normal game with combat, side quests, exploration, etc., the main quest is still about you banging all the special ladies throughout the realm, which will give you a key to becoming the legendary dragon slayer of the Goonerland. I'm obviously joking around here, but there's a nugget of truth sprinkled around in there. We don't have an obsession with hypersexualization compromising our games the same way that we have an obsession with far-left ideology compromising our games. So this whole exaggerated panic over it really has no bearing in reality whatsoever. So for as long as there's nothing to get autistic about, please shut up, mind your own business, play whatever you want to play. Feel free by all means to come out online and call people gooners and incels if that's what makes you happy. Like, if that's what satisfies your Christian hearts, go for it. Feel free to make your own videos on the games, feel free to review them, feel free to be like, this is bad, this is degenerate, you should not play it, go for it. Tend to your communities however you want. But stop the cringy ass ideological pushes, stop the calls for censorship, and for the love of everything that is holy, stop the victim cringe, because this was brought on by yourselves. We've been dealing with a woke DEI pushing far left for years, commanding what is and isn't appropriate to be in video games, shaping culture, infiltrating AAA franchises and studios, compromising the quality of our entertainment for their bullshit, and we are obviously not going to shut up and ask no questions or merely accept an attempt to do the exact same thing but from a different side. If you can't make reasonable arguments and act reasonably, then you cannot be surprised that there's backlash about it. Like, fuck the reasons, just stop doing the thing itself. We aren't advocating for censorship of religion in settings like Kingdom Come Deliverance, for example, where Christianity is accurately present, so why are you crying that you're being bullied out of gaming? Such a lefty thing to do too, like, we deserve to feel seen and validated in gaming, this doesn't just belong to you. Like, gaming is already for everyone. The same argument that I make against leftoids I'm having to make right now against these people as well. Gaming is here for everyone who bothers to actually mellow the fuck out, buy the stuff that interests them, and ignore the things that don't. Forcing something to reflect your personal values is what becomes invasive and narcissistic about it. And if this isn't the case at all, if this is not what these people are advocating for, then they should actually start making some valid arguments with tangible examples so we can hopefully move on to find common ground and understanding each other. With that said, that's about it from me now on this issue. Sorry if you're a fan of either of these people and you think that I'm being too harsh or unreasonable or whatever. I'm genuinely just trying to grasp at something of note. Anything at all that could create a middle ground of sorts for a productive discussion, to try and get an idea of where the limits are, because I don't want corn in my games either, but when I say corn, like I said in the video, I mean corn. I don't see the main industry becoming influenced by corn to be a good thing. That little side of it already exists. Anyone is free to buy and play those games if they so wish. The thing is, there is nothing that shows that corn is going to be brought on to the main industry. Nothing at all. It could never even goddamn work. Sony and Xbox don't allow those kinds of games on their platform. Stuff like that would just get censored or banned outright. This is being blown way out of proportion. It just looks like more satanic panic kind of nonsense to push for censoring shit that they themselves cannot personally handle. They are stretching the limits of what is considered lustful intent into unrealistic and untruthful degrees. By all means, live your life in accordance to your faith. There is nothing wrong with that. Do not engage with content that you don't like. Make videos to your audiences dedicated to whatever you approve or disapprove of. Give these games negative reviews if you want to, for example. You are free to do whatever you want within the confines of it not imposing on other people's freedom to do whatever it is that they want. Even if by your interpretation these are acts that you consider to be sinful, then you leave that up to them and their own journeys with God. And if ever there is an actual tangible issue rising up in the games industry, people will rise up to fight against it. Because at the end of the day, all that we want is for games to be good. And as of now, titties aren't really presenting an issue in that regard. So thank you very much for watching. As usual, like the video if you enjoyed it. It helps the channel. Dislike it if you didn't, and if you're interested, subscribe for more sauce. Have yourselves a great day, and I will see you on the next one.